最初はマンションなど借りるところを探してましたけど、結構な値段が張ったので、やはりネットカフェでとりあえず過ごそうと思ってましたね。貯金したくてもいつの間にかあんまりたまらなくなってるみたいな感じですね。さすがにいつまでもアルバイトでもいられませんから。
8年前に名古屋から上京してきたんですけど、建設系の会社で働いてたんですけど、腰をかなり痛めてしまったんですね。で、辞めるしかなくて、そっからもうずーっとネットカフェ生活ですね。
夜も朝もずっと食べれる置いてあるじゃないですか、も
う。皆さん仕事してるみたいなんですよね。ホームレスとまたちょっと違うんですよね。
Real estate and rental prices in Japan are rising rapidly, and this is one of the many reasons why some Japanese have chosen internet cafes as their monthly residence, as you will see in this video. In some cases, the situation is so dire that people have lived in these places for over 5 years. In the streets of Tokyo, amid numerous skyscrapers and tall buildings, several internet cafes serve as temporary homes for some individuals. When night falls, those who make these cubicles their home return to sleep there. These individuals are referred to as internet cafe refugees, a term used for people without a permanent residence who live in internet or manga cafes. The two are essentially the same, but there is a difference. Manga cafes are places where people go to read manga and relax. This may seem hard to believe. After all, who would want to live in such a small space? However, while the accommodations are limited and far from being as comfortable as an ordinary apartment, they do offer running water for hand washing, electricity, internet access, and their prices are much lower than those of traditional apartments. Because of this, many foreign backpackers and even people on short trips choose to stay in these establishments near train stations, even if just for one night, in a small cubicle equipped simply with a lamp, a computer, a pillow, and a mattress. Therefore, it is a viable option for those who only want to stay for a few days. However, for those referred to as refugees, these places become their homes for months or even years. Some Japanese workers, despite having jobs and income, prefer to stay in internet cafes rather than rent their own houses or apartments. As we have already mentioned, these individuals generally do not have a permanent residence and stay in these places for various reasons: delayed rent payments, family problems, or personal issues. Unable to live in their own homes or rent an apartment, they turn to these internet cafes, which are open practically 24/7. The term Internet Cafe Refugees emerged from a documentary series on TV Asahi in 2007. Its producer, Hiroaki Mizushima, who has extensive experience interviewing in refugee camps, spoke with young people who had been living in internet cafes for a long time. He revealed that these establishments in metropolitan areas have become like urban refugee camps. In this documentary, we meet a young Japanese security guard who, upon arriving in Tokyo, discovered that not only was rent expensive, but utility bills also posed a significant problem. Desperate, he turned to an internet cafe. After work, he uses the computer to play and relax a bit. In the morning, he gets ready, leaves the small cubicle, and returns to work, thus repeating the cycle. He hopes to acquire new skills and secure a full-time job to escape this situation as quickly as possible. After the documentary aired, internet cafe refugees became a much-discussed topic in Japanese society. That year, you might be wondering, aren't these refugees just homeless people? In fact, most of them are motivated to find jobs, but a significant portion of this group works in temporary day jobs. They often turn to staffing agencies to find temporary work that provides them with small daily incomes. Thus, at night, they are forced to stay in internet cafes or even in 24-hour convenience stores. This distinction sets them apart from the homeless, who are often seen as too troubled to work or simply uninterested in finding a job. During the day, some of them carry large backpacks to work, looking just like ordinary Japanese office workers, but they transport all their belongings without their boss or colleagues knowing. Essentially, they make a small adjustment by carrying everything they own from the internet cafe to work each day. NHK reported that about 80% of the people living in these establishments for a long time are men, while 20% are women, all aged between 30 and 40. Of those, 80% aspire to secure long-term housing. The program also mentioned that the monthly cost of living in one of these establishments is around 59,300 yen, which is nearly $400. Although the space is very limited, these facilities provide practically everything you need, and the cost includes water, electricity, and all other expenses. For example, if you need to use the restroom or a washing machine, it will cost about 3,000 yen, which is around $2 per hour. According to a 2018 survey by the Nihon Kei Shimbun, about 5,300 people live daily in internet cafes in Tokyo, of which around 4,000 do not have a fixed residence, and more than 70% have very unstable jobs. The survey also asked respondents why they lived in these places. About 31% indicated they were on a business trip or traveling and decided to spend the night there. Another 25% had nowhere else to go, while 13% stated they were working or entertaining themselves late and missed the last train home. Finally, 5.9% cited other reasons for not returning home. But why are there so many refugees in these internet cafes in Japan? The main reason lies in the country's poor economic conditions. In 2016, the Tokyo Metropolitan Government conducted the first survey on homeless people, similar to those classified as refugees. The results showed that there are about 4,000 homeless individuals each day, with 38.6% aged between 30 and 39 years, followed by those aged 50 to 59, representing a total of 29%. Almost half of these individuals have a monthly income ranging from 110,000 to 150,000 yen, which is approximately $1,000 to $1,350. You might think that's a decent amount of money and wonder if such a salary would be enough to rent an apartment. The issue in Japan, unlike in many other countries, is that renting an apartment requires not only the first month's rent, but also key fees, agency fees, and a security deposit. In other words, you must provide a guarantee that you can pay the rent for the upcoming months. In addition to the monthly rent, you must also pay some form of long-term security, generally equivalent to 1 or 2 months' rent. And this deposit is often required to prevent damage to the apartment by tenants. In addition to these costs, there is a tradition that has persisted since World War II, giving the equivalent of 1 or 2 months' rent, along with a red envelope, to the landlord as a gesture of appreciation for allowing the tenant to stay in the apartment. This money is referred to as gift money. Furthermore, there are insurance fees and various other expenses to consider. So even if you save over 200,000 yen, it may not be enough, especially with the high rents in Tokyo. As a result, individuals facing significant financial difficulties often cannot afford to rent an apartment. However, lack of funds is not the only reason. The manager of one of these establishments mentioned that many clients could actually afford to rent an apartment, but compared to Tokyo's rent, the monthly rates of internet cafes are much more advantageous. Indeed, there are no fees for gas, electricity, or any form of deposit or additional costs. A Japanese office worker living in one of these establishments also noted that it is easier to stay in an internet cafe near his workplace rather than waste time and energy commuting. Moreover, some people have become refugees due to very tense relationships with their families and simply choose to flee their homes. Research also indicates that over 200,000 of these individuals do not have stable employment, which is linked to the increasingly prevalent non-conventional employment system in Japan, commonly referred to as the temporary work system. After the burst of the economic bubble in Japan in the 1990s, the Japanese economy experienced a downturn, leading to the collapse of the system that guaranteed lifetime employment and career promotions. To cut costs, companies began outsourcing their staff and signing contracts with staffing agencies to provide workers. This new system saves large companies significant money, as they no longer have to pay for unemployment insurance or other additional expenses. On the other hand, the work of temporary workers is unstable and precarious. Many of these workers have no idea what their next job will be or where it will be, which makes it more difficult for them to settle down permanently. This is why it is more practical for them to stay in internet cafes, as these places offer greater flexibility. They can choose to leave whenever they wish and move to a location closer to their next job. The process of becoming a refugee goes through several stages. Initially, this may happen because people have been laid off, are unemployed, unable to pay rent, or simply unwilling to return home. As a result, they opt for internet cafes as temporary shelters. Unable to find stable employment, the time spent in these establishments gradually extends from 1 month to 1 year, then to 2 years, and so on. Although labor laws in Japan remain quite complex, the protection of the rights and interests of these temporary workers is gradually being strengthened. In the future, there may no longer be daily contracts that only allow workers to know where they will work the day before. However, as time passes, it will be even more challenging to improve the working conditions and overall situation of these temporary workers. The emergence of these refugees reflects the difficulties faced by the lower tier of the Japanese labor market, where more and more companies are simply replacing regular employees with cheap temporary workers. These individuals are gradually becoming second-class citizens. Nowadays, many of them do not have enough money to pay rent and must live in internet cafes. If you are interested in this topic, feel free to comment and share your opinions. Don't forget to support us by subscribing and leaving a thumbs up, and we will see you in the next video.